shall we?
My name is Dylan Devaney. I am the principal narrative game designer for the Universes Beyond creative team, and I had the pleasure and luxury of being the narrative lead for this wonderful, wonderful Final Fantasy set.
Dylan, how did this collaboration come about originally?
The easiest answer is that Wizards of the Coast and myself and all the other team members that worked on this, we're huge fans of Final Fantasy. And it turns out, Square Enix team, huge fans of Magic the Gathering. And so as we were exploring the Universes Beyond properties and we were talking around to other partnerships that were like, hey, are you interested in this? We're doing this new program, we're doing this new idea. We all caught wind of each other very fast, quickly had a conversation going, and we're like, I'm a big fan of your thing, you're a big fan of my thing, and then a very natural conversation just started, and we're like, let's do it.
The challenges of having a game that spans over 37 years and putting it all into one set so far, ...
So, trying to fit all of these 16 games into one set was absolutely a challenge, and it was also just a sheer joy, a sheer pleasure, right? Great excuse to play through everything if we hadn't played it in a while, or play through a game I had just beaten right before we started the project, but it really came down to, like, Square Enix respects each individual game as its own IP, and so learning how to do the same, taking the same lens of like, yes, I have my favorite, but every single game is someone's favorite. We all had that like understanding, went through that training together to figure out how we would possibly fit all that history into a single set with a single series. Luckily, now we make a lot of Magic cards, so we had ample opportunity to explore as much as we possibly could.
There are a lot of like iconic characters in the set. Obviously, you hit all the big ones in your commander decks and your starter sets. But take us into the room of like how you decide, okay, who's a commander, who's just a creature, right? Or who's a legendary creature and who's just a regular creature and who's a cameo, right? Take us through that because there's a ton of characters and not everyone may have their favorite in here, right?
Right. Yeah. So when we were working with Square Enix, we had a lot of conversations, a lot of opportunities. Like, hey, we're really excited about this list of characters, and then we'd send it over to them, and they'd be like, okay, that looks good. But we really like these characters as well, so we'd like to see them somewhere too. Like, okay, sounds good, no problem. And then we would go to the character list, to the file, and we'd be like, all right, well, these characters have some similar power sets. These characters have some different power sets. It's really good for a Magic set to have a wide like portfolio of how we can overlap characters into our mana colors and our mechanics. So we would explore what characters just had abilities, just like top down. It's like, that would be a sweet card. That would be a sweet card. Oh, that slots into red mana really well, or something like that. And so we would go through the list and we would see who just kind of like fit really fast. Then when we were talking about the commander decks, so trying to figure out who's supposed to lead them, what games are we supposed to do, that helped us make decisions of who's going to appear in the main set and who's going to appear in the commander set. Because the philosophy with Final Fantasy was we need to go as wide as possible to try and include as many of everyone's favorite as possible. So instead of making like 4, 5, 6, 7 different versions of Cloud or Sephiroth, we made 2 or 3 so we could have more space to make 4 or 5 different versions of other characters. And so that list was iterative over time, and we worked very, very closely with Square Enix to figure out who do you want to make sure gets out there, who do we want to make sure that we get out there, and then who makes a really good Magic card. A simple philosophy that we had was that if the character has a name, like they're a named character or they're an NPC with a name that's like notable, they get a legendary creature card, bar none, that's it. Otherwise, they need to appear like on a spell or an instant or an enchantment, stuff like that. And then if it was a monster or a mascot, like a Moogle or a Chocobo or a Tonberry, those could be evergreen. Those are an example of something that is consistent in Final Fantasy. That would just be a regular card. Unless it was like a boss or an iconic super boss or something. Yeah, right, exactly.
So I know you're not the art department. I don't talk about because you guys went, the route that I would expect you to take. But a lot of these games, 1 through 7, the original ones were very stylized. Pixel art. 7 has its own set of problems now. Looking back, what made your team decide on to do like the remake versions or like more modern versions of these characters from Final Fantasy 7, 1 through 6 and 7?
Right, yeah. So on the creative team, we handle like writing the art briefs and commissions, and we work with our art directors to commission all of the wonderful art for our sets. And we had a lot of conversations about how we wanted to approach that and how we wanted to dive into that. Final Fantasies 1 through 6 represent a very classic exploration of fantasy, and especially with Square Enix as a Japanese company. It was really their idea of, at the time, Final Fantasy 1, Fantasy 2, of like a lens of looking at Western fantasy and how they interpreted it. So when we in a way, got magic to Final Fantasy, we were then reinterpreting, what we understand fantasy to be through their lens back into our lens. And so when we did that, when we were exploring our house style in the earlier games, Square Enix was like, oh, this is great. Like, this is awesome. This is kind of like what we imagine, so to speak, of like what these characters and moments would have been, parties delving into dungeons and fighting dragons and things like that. So for the first 6 games, we really wanted to ensure that we were bringing up the like level of fidelity and quality in detail of character designs and of locations, so it looks like it fits into Magic. But we did want to make sure that we were respecting the original designs and keeping it consistent with what a fan would remember about these characters. So if you look at like the Final Fantasy I job select cards, we could go really super detailed with all of the armor and stitching in the robes and things like that. But we wanted to keep them simple as a reflection of like the focused narrative and design and visual goals of the original games. But when we hit Final Fantasy VII, the Final Fantasy VII remake, trilogy had kicked off. We had super up-to-date visuals, and so we decided we were going to do the original Final Fantasy VII narrative world story, but we're going to use the high-fidelity assets of the remake trilogy to overlay and uplift. So that way, if you are a fan of the original, all the content is familiar. But if you're a brand new fan to 7, just getting into the remake, it looks like what you remember and what you have just played and gets you excited. So since 7 created like a new fan base, we wanted to make sure that every Final Fantasy 7 fan, no matter what area you're from, could come in and recognize something.
So no Square Hands Cloud, he didn't make the cut?
We had a lot of actual conversations like, can we get a Polygon Cloud in here somewhere? We did explore that conversation. Polygons and 3D models on card art, it gets strange really fast. But we talked about it.
So your job as a narrative designer, where'd you start? 1 through 14, all different stories, all different enemies, all different subtext and themes and characters.
That is a great question. I think about this a lot. I'm like lying in bed. I'm like, how did we even do this, right? So, I mean, the easiest answer is when we first kicked off the team, we just put up like conspiracy board level of just paper on walls, whiteboards. We got Excel sheets open, and we just made Final Fantasy 1, Final Fantasy 2, Final Fantasy 3. We just made a list, and then we just wrote every single thing that we could remember down, like nostalgically of like, okay, so I remember doing this and going here and doing that. Just like it's been so long since I played it, but what stuck with me? We did that with the whole core team for each of the games, and at the time it was just 1 to 15 because 16 wasn't out yet. Then we went through and we talked to our fellow wizards who were Final Fantasy fans, asked them the same question, like, hey, what's the thing that you remember even after all this time? Or, hey, you just did a playthrough, what are the top 5 things you remember, right? We added to the list. Then I'd go to Square Enix and I'd talk to each of the teams and the title owners and the producers and the designers. It's like, what's the thing about your game that you love, that you are very proud of, that you would want people to see again after all this time? I got all the answers, we added to the list. And finally then, we were able to start the conversation. Because then we started trying to tier content out of like, this is a tier 1 thing, a chocobo, a Moogle, a mascot. It has to be here. It's DNA of Final Fantasy, like Cloud, Sephiroth. Tier 2, if you're a big fan of one specific game, you should see these references because they're just so classic. It's like the top 10 things that every fan would have a conversation about. And then tier 3 was super deep cut, massive Easter egg. You are a true nerd if you're like, no way they did that, right? And so we used that system to help kind of build out all the earliest kind of content we wanted to explore.
The suplex card, yeah, that's like tier 3, right?
Suplex, it's so funny because it's like, you have to know that. You have to be a 6 fan. You have to be watching speedruns every year to be like, it needs to be in there. But it's so popular, right, that it like starts to move up there. So yeah. And funny enough, if you look at the suplex card art, the Phantom Train art, and then Sabine in the Commander deck, he's in the middle of his Blitz animation in his card art. We can see him on suplex, he's about to get to the train, and then the Phantom Train is them chasing when the boss battle starts. So if you put them all together, it's the full gambit of that moment.
What can you say to fans out there that maybe are a huge fan of like one particular game, maybe 9 or 8, and they don't have as many cards as they would like to have in the set? What would you say to them about them? If they don't, there's not enough Squall, there's not enough Vivi, there's not enough, Gunblades. I don't think anyone would ever say that, but you know what I mean?
Right. So, like, when we are working on the set and when we're trying to find space and how wide we're trying to go and trying to capture all the game, we really did our very best to ensure that we were distilling down the things that we needed to see, that we wanted to see. If we couldn't get you your favorite character, I tried to put them on card art. If I couldn't put them on card art, I tried to put them on flavor text. And if I couldn't put them on flavor text, I tried to get a promo to put them on there, because I know every game is so important to every person. So we wanted to make sure that even if we got there, or if we went deeper on one game versus another, that we did get the evergreen like distillation of what you needed to see, what you wanted to see. And then I'll say a lot of those cards, like Squall is a great example, I've been blown out by Squall in internal testing so many times. It was just like, don't sleep on those cards, right? And a lot of those worlds still exist. They still persist. And we were very excited to get them in as much as we could.
But like, going back to the commander conversation, that had to be huge for your team, because like, what if someone wants a Barret commander? What if someone wants a VV commander, or the insert obscure character here commander, but instead it's just a creature, or it's just a spell with the card art? Like, how did you that's got to be just difficult.
Yeah, so
there's no question. It's difficult.
Well, it's like it was as painful for us to cut someone from the set as it feels to see that your character got crunched out, right? We had to make a lot of decisions. If we wanted to make a set that was exclusively all of the playable Final Fantasy characters, all the main characters, beloved NPCs, and villains, we would need an 800-card draftable main set, and it would only be legendary creatures, right? We would have no story moments, no spells, no non-legendary creatures, no enchantments, no lands, right? Because there's just that many characters. So what we tried to do is that if you're a big 9 fan, like if you want to play Vivi and Steiner and Zidane and Garnet, we wanted to give you characters that are representative of your game, so you can go get other cards and other spells and then put them into your deck. So like if you wanted to play like a 9-themed deck, right? Maybe you go play Zidane, he's red-white, and you can put Steiner in there, and you can put Fire Magic in there, which is a red spell, so they go together. So you can still see Vivi in your 9 deck, and you can still see Steiner in your deck. So we tried to make sure that there was some correlation and some overlap, so you could build something that was still representative for commanders specifically. But thankfully, we have so many different kinds of formats, and players are always making emerging versions of their own decks and formats, that every legendary creature will have a home somewhere. And so if you want to build like a Steiner commander deck, that's awesome. It's going to be really fun. If you want to put them into like a Pauper commander deck and have a great time, that sounds great. If you want to build some Steiner CDH and like bring it to your, like, awesome, cool. Like you should be able to do that.
So, for viewers out there who maybe aren't familiar, you guys have a lot of different formats, but like when you make a set as big as this one that's not limited, you have to keep every player in mind, not just commander, but drafting, standard, modern, type 2. It's been a while since I've seen the other, but all these formats that you have to kind of intersect into your main set, because I feel like players just look at it and go like, well, none of these cards are good in commander, so they just suck. Well, no, they're just not meant to be played in commander. They're meant to be played in limited, or they're meant to be played in Pauper or something else, right? You got to make sure. Is it difficult to make sure you kind of hit a little bit of each one of those types of games that each individual player plays, even though commander's arguably the biggest one?
Well, right. So that's why we make our different products, right? When we want to make cards for Commander, we're going to make the precons, and those cards are designed specifically to have a fun time in Commander. That's the audience, those are the players, that's their format, we want to make cards for that. But when we're making cards for like our draftable main set, we made like 300 plus cards for that set, for the people who love playing limited, for the people who want to be drafting every single night, the people who want to be playing sealed or doing like a pre-release with their friends, if they want to go sleeve up and do constructed and get into standard, put those cards into Pioneer, like those cards are made intentionally for that. And of course they're going to bleed over into each other's formats, right? But it's the intent of when we're building and what experience we're trying to give you. And then once we have done that, once we've tailored it to that format and it's in your hands, do whatever you want. They're totally yours. You can put them into any card, you put it in any deck, any format, put them all together, and do your best to make your own cool combos and things like that. But it's really like when you evaluate a card, like looking at the intent of where it was supposed to be, what it's supposed to do, and how you want to play it. But we're never going to stop you for however you want to play it.
Are there any cards internally that just didn't make the cut that you can talk about without getting in trouble?
No, unfortunately. There's tons I could talk about, but without getting in trouble? No, absolutely not. Yeah.
So, obviously it's a Final Fantasy set.
Yeah.
Was Kingdom Hearts on the table at all at any point?
At no point were we like trying to also get Kingdom Hearts in there. Like, obviously, we're just huge fans of Square Enix games, but when we signed up for Final Fantasy, we were specifically going for this kind of shape. We really wanted to approach that because with 16 games, that's still so much content, and we, of course, would be so excited to work on every single IP out there, right, that we're all big fans of in the office. But to do credit and to like have the responsibility to bring in such a massive franchise, we needed to find those focus moments. And so we were always talking about Final Fantasy from the get-go, and our goal was always to try and reach the shape that we got to today.
It's a type of Final Fantasy, kind of, sort of, not really.
There are Final Fantasy characters in it. That is for sure true. Yeah.
They are in it.
Yes, correct.
So what's one card you're really looking forward to getting into the rotation as the pre-release rolls out for Commander that you've seen, that you want to see people experiment with when it finally gets out of your internal playtesting?
There are so many cards I want to talk about. I think for me, I'm very excited to see what people do with Balthier and Fran. So Balthier and Fran, they're a red-green legendary creature, but they care about vehicles. And normally when we do things about vehicles, maybe it's in blue-white or black-white, like your Greasefang decks or your other kinds of like artifact-based combo decks. Red-green is a really interesting space for vehicles and artifacts. You know, we've been doing a couple of cards like that recently. So I'm excited to see someone make a very stompy, smashy, extra turn vehicle combo, get the shawl off the bonus sheet, put it in your deck. And I'm excited to see what players do with that, because I personally like it when we take like an archetype or a theme or a strategy that we do consistently and a handful of colors consistently, and we move it to another color and see what the decks come out of it. And I'll personally be building it once I open up my celebrity artist version, and I'm very excited.
What was the like go-to commander internally for your playtest team?
So whenever we were playtesting the commander decks, I was always on the Final Fantasy 14 decks, and that is I'm a 14 fan, but very specifically, over time, I've become a control player. I used to just be like good green ramp. I was honest, and then blue is just so fun. So I was always really like, I liked being in the control seat, because sometimes it can be a harder deck to navigate. So we wanted to make sure that if this was your first deck, you should be able to feel like you are a spellcaster in control and like getting to do your strategies correctly. So I was usually playing that one, but then the 7 deck I also did a lot of effort with Daniel because I worked on the backup commanders of Gratia and Tifa, and that deck was really important to kind of like try and nail every single legendary party member's like core gameplay strategy, and I put a lot of time into helping him design Tifa. And so those are the 2 decks I was playing the most. And then if we weren't doing the face commanders of Cloud and Y'shtola, I was swapping for the secondary commanders to make sure that they were also getting the time to test as well.
Now, approximately, once you have the license and things are signed, how long does it take for you to like, okay, we're doing the set, to having a box in front of you can hold in your hand to ship, like give or take?
Give or take 4 years.
4 years?
Yeah.
That's one high school.
Yeah. Okay, when you say it like that, I can feel the gray hairs coming through. Yeah, about 4 years. And to be honest, you know, we kind of talk about this internally, and maybe it's a little cheesy, but like I do believe it, and I stand by it. Like, it took us 4 years to make it, but really we've been working on this set like our whole lives. Like, we needed to have been players our whole lives to get here, to start to work on this, to do it right. Like, I had to have been sick a lot as a kid and like not have a lot of friends for a while to like get to the point where I just played these games over and over again so I could get to work on this and then do it right. So 4 years / my whole life.
If their favorite characters not in this, like say like they really wanted a Rufus legendary creature, or a Rude, or any of the Turks, right? Or the Turks on one card would be a great legendary commander. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself.
No.
Is it possible to maybe do like a secret layer where you feature that oddball character that maybe people really wanted to be a legendary creature in the set in the future?
What I can answer is that like everything that we've done was trying to give every fan the widest possible amount of tools to play Final Fantasy as best as possible. Would I love to be working on Final Fantasy stuff for the rest of my life? Absolutely. But like right now, this is the set that we kind of focused on. And you know, if you were a big fan of Rufus, or Reno and Rude, or Elena, we did make all those cards for you, so you do have them. Or your character, you know, Sung appeared on art as well. But for where we're at right now, like 4 years to make this set, this is just kind of like everything has been built to this, and who knows what the future holds. I'm day by day these days.
You can't win, much like a fighting game roster. You're gonna leave somebody out, and everyone's gonna be like, but they didn't put oddball X character in here, and I'm very upset about that. But you said you tried very hard to just include everybody in some way.
Yeah, and then we had the conversation. There was never a character where we just forgot. I've seen some people be like, oh, I can't believe they forgot to do this. Totally understandable like reaction if you didn't get your thing. But we didn't forget. We had the conversation. We probably talked for hours about it. I probably raised my voice and someone was like, no, we gotta do this thing and we gotta do this thing. And then, so like we always had those conversations, and really what is here and what's left is the result of many, many years of internal work, and then Square Enix also providing their feedback, their opinion, their guidance, their wisdom, and everything else. So, yes, of course, we couldn't get everyone in there, which is such a bummer. I'm a huge Final Fantasy IV fan. That is my personal favorite Final Fantasy. I didn't even get half my party in here, so it's like, I too have been like, well, we should have done this. I wish I had.
You said it would be an entire set of characters and nothing else, and they'd all have to be legendary, right? And they'd all have to be different.
We would make you a 2,000 card set, and that's a lot of Magic cards. We already make a lot of Magic cards.
How did you go about your career path to become a narrative designer in Magic? Walk us through your career a little bit.
Yeah, sure. So I always wanted to get into games ever since I was young. Final Fantasy IV, The Legend of Zelda, just like those two games were the first games that kind of like unlocked something for me. And I've just kept them in mind my entire life. And it's always been my hobby. It's always been my go-to. And so as I was getting older to figure out what I wanted to do in a career, I went to school. I went to Full Sail University for creative writing for entertainment. And then I got my master's in game design and production. Moved out to Seattle. I worked at Microsoft for a couple years. Worked at Sony for a little bit. I was in VR for a little bit. But every single place I went to, it was always about progressing the steps to take to work on the next story, work on the next game, work on whether I was doing testing or I was helping the designers or I was on the soundstage doing mocap. It was always about getting further and further into that world. But all the while, I have been a TCG player my whole life. So started with Pokemon, got into Yu-Gi-Oh, and then eventually made my way into Magic. Right, yeah, Magic was like the older kid game where I was from in New Jersey, so like, no, you can't play with this. But as I got older, I finally was like, got my time to play, and I was like, whoa, I love this game. And so I've just always been a Magic fan, a Magic player, and then there was just one serendipitous day where I was just like cruising through online. I saw reposts like, hey, they're opening up a role on Universes Beyond for a narrative designer. And Universes Beyond, when it was first announced and it first introduced to Magic, it was very tenuous. Everyone was very split. And I saw that and I was like, I feel like I can see the golden path. I feel like I could see where this could go, and I want to be a part of that. So I just threw my name in, and
it's just that easy. You make it sound so easy.
That's 10 plus years of working in the AAA video game industry to get to a one-off application. Yeah, if that sounds easy to you, all right, then it was very easy.
I just showed up with some gumshoe and resume, and they said, you're hired, kid.
I had a tie on, and I walked right in. No. Then like the interview process was a very long time, and I met a bunch of amazing people. But really, it was like, I was working in the industry for 10 years. I got my master's, got my bachelor's, been working everything towards it to just get the opportunity to start on doing this. And then when I got into here, I had the luxury to work with some of the best people I've ever worked with my entire life. Like, I always say at Wizards, when people come to interview, like, they want to join, they're like, what's the company culture like? I'm like, every single day I meet someone new from a new department or another floor, they're the next coolest person I have ever met that day. And it's just like, it's very inspiring. When you work with people who care about what they do, it's infectious, and it makes you care even more about what you do, and just creates this feedback loop of like, yeah, let's do that, yeah, let's do that. It's just very exciting.
What's a big misconception from like a hardcore Commander player who's there every Friday night, spends $50,000 on a sliver deck, like may not know what it takes to work at Hasbro or Wizards of the Coast? Like, what's the biggest misconception from a player like that in your job environment?
So, I mean, if there's going to be a misconception about what it's like to work in our job environment, I see a lot of comments, and again, like, I understand them. I always understand them. About like, oh, this card is super weak or this card is super broken, and it's like, how did they not test this? Or it's the same thing you see with like AAA games too. It's like a game comes out and they're like, oh, the devs didn't test this, and it's like, I promise you, as someone who worked in QA for a really long time, we are testing, the devs are testing, everyone's working on it, they're doing their best. And for us too, it's like, we have maybe like, we're playing games every day, maybe there's like 50 of us jamming games, doing tests, writing results, giving feedback, but there are 50,000 active Magic players. your first day of pre-release, the world's gonna get more games in than we could in the years we were testing in, just by sheer volume and numbers. So we do our absolute very best. We have an intent and goals and structure to get there. But of course, when you're that massively outscaled, people are gonna find the best combos or the coolest things, or So really, it's just like. The players are such a huge part of what makes Magic the Gathering amazing and what the community builds it to be. And so really, when we are working on sets, it's just like, we love this too, and we're trying to make stuff for you to love as well. And we do our very best. I think we're really good at it, but there'll be times where maybe something should have had probably not an extra toughness, or something should have cost a little bit more mana,